Hi, everyone, and welcome to Swexen Podcast. Or today is actually a live cast because you can see both on YouTube and Facebook, and you can hear on it in the podcast. And why? Because I have the first guest of this year. Welcome, Frida.
Hi, thank you.
Hi. So you're sitting in Florida now, right?
I am Cape Coral, Florida.
There you go. Well, welcome. And if you're following us on social media, you saw probably that I put out a post earlier last week about, hey, if you want to be my guest, if you have a story to tell, please let me know. And you answered that so kindly. And I got really hooked on your story here. So, absolutely. So, tell me about you. Who are you?
Well, I'm Frida. I'm 26 years old. Right now, I live in Florida. I have a husband, Nick, and I have a son, David. Obviously, probably as you can tell from the that I'm in here, I'm not from the States. I'm from Sweden.
Yes.
I'm
Where in
on.
Sweden are you from?
I'm from Malmo. Well, outside of Malmo, it's like a little village almost. It's called.
And for those of you now who doesn't know Swedish geography, Malmö is like the third biggest town, and it's like in South Sweden.
Very
So
south.
yes,
Yeah.
and
So that's where I grew up, and I'm on my 4.5 year over here. So almost 5 years. That's when I can get my citizenship, actually.
wow, cool beans.
Yeah.
So we got to start this because with something very un-Swedish to do. We got to brag because today when we record this, it's Saturday. When this is going to be published, I always tell when I record stuff because it makes more sense if something has happened in the time between. They know that why I didn't bring up that because time wasn't enough. We both did something this morning. um, we did you do a 5 or 10 or what did you do? What distance?
It was a 5. Mine was a 5 too.
You did a 5 too. So we
Yeah.
both did a 5K race. You are an experienced runner, me not so much. This was my life first. But hold up your medal. We got to brag because Swedes does not brags, right?
Mine actually not that extraordinary today, but it's still cute. It's a little medal.
There you go. There you go. So how did it go for you? Brag
It
for me
went
here, girl.
well. I placed first in my age group and third overall. So a good run.
Sweet.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
But you are an athlete. Like seriously,
I would say.
tell me, Thai boxing? What
Yeah.
in the world? How do you start with Thai boxing?
So I was in gymnasium. That's like kind of after high school, before college in Swedish school system. And I didn't know what I wanted to do. I've always been kind of like athletic by myself. I liked running and I played soccer and I did all kind of stuff. But I wanted to do something else. I was getting bored of just going to the gym and lifting weights. So actually my school had like a field trip to a boxing gym. And they had
Wow,
regular
that's kind
boxing.
of uncommon.
Yeah, they had regular boxing, Thai boxing, MMA, and wrestling, I think. So somehow this guy, instructor there, like kind of pushed me into like, oh, you should try one of our Thai boxing classes, like at nighttime. So I was like, okay, I might as well try. So I tried it and it was really fun. It was like, I didn't have any experience. And normally when you compete in those kind of sports, you have a lot of experience. And I was brand new, like at 20, had no idea what I was doing. Um, but I liked it. So I actually signed up and I started the beginner's class and I went to every class they had. Every class, every week, the weekends, everything. And then I saw one of the events was coming up. So I went with some people from the gym and I saw them fighting. And I was like, I want to do that. Like, I want to fight. This is what I want to do. I'm going to have a fight like within this year. So I
Because
had a
Thai
fight.
boxing in Sweden is not a big sport whatsoever. It's a really tiny sport.
Yeah. So it's
Sorry
becoming
for
bigger now with like the MMA community and stuff, but it's not anything compared to how it's here. Like, here
like
it's a.
Sweden has soccer and ice hockey. Okay.
Yeah. So I had a fight that same year. My first fight, I actually lost with 2 points. Um, And I was like, well, now I gotta win. I gotta have another one. So I had another fight that it was even. It was 15-15.
Well,
I was
improvement.
it. Then I had a third fight and I won that one.
There you go. Third time is
That
a
that
charm.
that's where it started. Like I just got hooked on the sport and I was like, I gotta do this. I wanna try it. I wanna have a new motivational thing in life to keep me motivated and on track. So that's where I got hooked.
And you did this sport for a, quite a while and you became very successful, right? And you
So
went to Thailand to box?
yeah, so I always wanted to go to Thailand, and I'd been there before on a vacation. One of my friends was there. We traveled to Australia and then went to Asia. But after I started Thai boxing, I was like, I gotta go to Thailand. Like, that's where it's from. That's where, that's where you find all the big guys. So I recently had bought my apartment in Sweden, and I had my first real big girl job, worked in an office. And I saved my whole vacation because in Sweden you get a lot of vacation time. I got 5 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Luxury.
so I saved them the whole summer. I didn't take anything out, and then in April the following year I went to Thailand for a month. Um,
Wow.
yeah, so that's kind of where I felt like there was more people noticing me actually doing the sport because it was like, oh, she's just not playing around, like she's taking this serious. She's out there
Yeah.
doing this.
Well, it's not easy in a country like Sweden that you have, sorry for Bam Bam joining into the conversation here. In Sweden, it's a small country and you're doing a tiny sport in a small country. It is hard to get your name out there
And
because
it was
the
also, yeah,
audience is small too.
and it was also hard because even like as more as I got into it, I got into the community, and like in the community you feel like there's a lot of people loving the Thai boxing and the sport, which there is, but there's not enough fighters all the time. Like in my weight class there was always a struggle to find someone that I could fight because there wasn't that many girls in
Girls,
Sweden,
no.
and if you found one, oh well, maybe she had 10 years of experience, I came with one. Or when I was like 2 years in, I had 2 years experience and there was one who just started. Like it wasn't always like I even fought one of my friends one time, and like it's hard because you get to know everyone and the community isn't that big, so there's a big chance or risk of you ending getting matched up with someone you actually know when you don't always want to fight your friends. That's not fun.
Well, it sounds kind of tough too as well. But Thai boxing was also your link or your bridge over to US, right? You got
Yeah.
sponsors or scholarships? What happened
So
there?
my dad, he's doing drag racing cars, and
Cool.
he got a green card, um, which included him, my stepmom, and my two younger siblings, and it included me right on time because he got it in December when I was 20, and I turned 21 that April. And if I would have turned
Oh.
21, I wouldn't have been included.
Oh.
So they were all like, they were gonna move. Like, if we get approved for this green card, we're gonna move. That's what it is. And I was like, well, of course, it was a little bit cool to be able to brag and say, "Oh, I got a green card," but in my head, I wasn't moving. I bought my first apartment in Sweden. I now had a full-time job. I had my whole life there, so I was like, "No, I'm not moving. I'll come and visit you, and that'll be fun." But that's about it. But I let's see, they flew here in November of 2017, I think. And I was getting bored in Sweden. I felt like I wasn't getting anywhere. I took some college classes and I was working. And then I was like, well, maybe I want to do more with the boxing. Maybe I actually want to do it while I'm young. So my dad helped me get one sponsor, and then I got another sponsor called Bad Chicks MMA. So they do martial arts gear for girls
Hmm.
only. Um,
Cool.
so I kind of got a deal where I would go over here for 3 months, I think it was, and have like a fight camp. That's when you prepare for a fight, and then you'll have a fight in the end of it. Um, So I was like, well, I might as well just do that. I can rent sublet my apartment to someone else. So I just rented it out to a friend in Sweden, and I had one bag with me because I wasn't moving over here. I stayed with my dad and them because he had already moved, and I was training. I was up at 6 a.m. every night. Every morning. I had a morning training. Then I had a midday training, and then I trained 2 hours a night. So I trained about 6 hours a day. That was like all I did. So I was just
That's a
working out.
lot.
Oh, I've never been in that good shape, but I've also never been that exhausted. Like,
I figure,
not
yeah.
every day. And it was also like, to be honest, I didn't really get the taste of America when I first did that because that's
Because
all
you
I
were just working out. That's all
yeah.
you did, huh?
But I got a feeling for this in the gym I was at. I was like, oh shit, like they really are, like, I saw my own development, how much better I did and how good I did. So I ended up going back to Sweden. Then I went back here again, did it one more time. Then I went back to Sweden, and on my third trip, I was going here for my third time, and I think this was 4 months. This time was a little bit longer because I still had my apartment at home, so I needed to make sure everything was covered for and being taken care of, whatever. So I was training at another gym at this time. It was a new gym, and there were some more fighters my size. Basically, it was easier for me to actually spar with someone or train with someone. And I went to this chiropractor that I met through the gym. And the girl on the front desk, she was my age, she said, well, we started talking. Every time I came in, we ended up talking for like 15-20 minutes
Of
because
course.
everyone talks here.
Oh, yeah.
So she was like, oh, you should go on a date with my friend. And I'm like, no, not going on any dates. I'm like, I have my ticket back home. I've just been in a long relationship. I don't want to go on a date. She's like, but it's just for fun, if you guys don't click, you can, then that's about it. And I was like, I've never been on a date like that. We don't do
Because
that
we don't date in Sweden in the same way as they do over here, right?
not at all.
No, it's different.
So
That's why I'm still single, I guess.
I have such a hard time. Like, how much do you dress up? Like, do I just
Yeah.
let him pay or should I offer to pay? And like, do I let him open the door or should I do it? Or like, because it's so not how at least I grew up. That's not what
Oh,
we
no.
do in Sweden.
Mm-mm.
So she talked me into it, and I ended up going on this date. And I told this guy before that I was like, well, I have a training tomorrow at 6 a.m. So I can't be out late. Like, we're going to have ice cream because didn't want to go and sit down in a restaurant because I didn't know how to behave. So, and I told him before I got there, I was like, I can't be out late. It's going to be something quick and fast. And, then I got to go because I have to be up and leave my house by 6. He was like, okay, that's fine. He's like, whatever. So I went on the date, and that was with Nick, who is now my husband. We ended up talking till 2 a.m. So it didn't get much sleep.
Oops.
We sat outside the coffee place. Like, when they closed, we were still sitting at the benches outside. Like, we didn't leave there until 2 a.m. Then he walked me to my car, and I remember that he was going for a kiss, and I was like, nah, not yet. We're not there. I left, and I think we saw each other 2 or 3 days later, and then about a week later, I moved into his apartment. Yep, this was in February, March-ish, around there. And then I had a big fight, and he was super supportive, which I didn't really know how it was going to go because I'd never had a boyfriend around when I was in this type of training because it requires a lot. It requires a lot of time, effort, into what you eat, and like no social life.
Concentration, yeah.
I couldn't go out and do stuff because this was what I had. Like, I needed to focus on the goal, and there was nothing on the sides because distractions are, it ruins sometimes. But he was super supportive. He woke up with me in the mornings. He made sure that, there was something to eat as soon as I got home, and, that I could just go to bed and whatever. And then
Wow.
title fight, May 4th that year. And he was there, and it went really well. I won, and it was cool because that was the first time I had my people. Because from we started dating until my flight, I got to know him and his friends, and they were all there. You know, that was a big thing for me because before, here's the Swedish girl, but she's by herself. You know, my dad came or my stepmom came, but it wasn't like I didn't have my crowd. It was always the other person's crowd.
Yeah.
It was
Oh,
really
yeah.
cool. And then I went back to June. Went back to Sweden in June, 2 months later, and I sold my apartment that I had there. And when I got back, we got our first apartment together over here, and that was 2019.
Wow. Wow. That's a story. And then you decided that you were going to get married,
Yes.
right? And like 2019 tells me COVID. So not
So
only have you just moved over to US, you're now also getting married and COVID hits and you have something else on top of that?
yeah. So actually, what happened was in August we went to Sweden together because Nick was like, "I want to meet your family," because they were here right before we started dating, so he never saw them that time, and they usually come once a year. So he was like, "Well, why don't we go together in August, and I can meet them." So we did, and the last day of our vacation in Sweden, he had like somehow talked because my dad was there too at the time on vacation. So he talked to my mom and my dad somehow and had a big dinner planned with my grandparents and my siblings and my aunts and uncles in Sweden, and he proposed there. Yeah,
Woohoo!
and I was
That's
like,
cool.
holy shit. Yep.
Surprise! That came out of nowhere. You had no clue.
No, I thought that he was gonna like propose maybe like the next spring or like maybe because we had a trip planned to New York or something later on. But because he didn't know my family that well, I was like, oh no, there's no
That's
way.
risky business, man.
Yep.
Wow.
So that happened, and we were like, well, let's get married in Sweden. That way his family could come there too, and they could see everything, see my country,
Yeah.
whatever. So we found a little cute barn that we were gonna rent out with catering and everything outside of Malmo, and we got spring 2020 was when it was gonna happen.
Ooh.
And at this point of time, when we booked everything, this was November 2019. COVID wasn't like that big, It wasn't like, oh my god, the corona.
No.
That wasn't really how it was yet. So one of my friends went on FaceTime and showed us the barn and everything, and we booked it. It was booked. It was set. And then in December, we went to New York, the trip I thought that he was going to propose on. And I was not feeling good. I was sick. I was not doing my best. Got home, and we found out that I was pregnant. Not only was I told that I couldn't be pregnant, but we also,
Surprise.
4.5 months away. But we were like, it's still early, so we can still do the wedding because, it's fine. It's
Corona
gonna be.
is gonna be gone by then, right?
So I fly to Sweden in February, just me this time, to just check everything out, make sure everything's good for the wedding. And I'm sitting there. It's funny because I told you this, how I'm just getting a bunch of messages, and I'm like, US are closing their borders. And I was like, what borders? I'm like, what?
What borders?
Because I mean, like, but at this point in time, yes, COVID just started to become a big thing. They just noticed that it spread out of China.
Mm-hmm.
And Nick called me. He's like, no, like they are closing their borders. Even if you have a green card, you're not getting into the country.
No.
And I'm like, no way. So me and my mom was sitting there at like 10 p.m. calling the American embassy, calling the Swedish embassy, and US are closing their borders. And they gave a 24 hours notice. And there I'm sitting pregnant. And I was very early at this time. But I was like, what if I get stuck here my whole pregnancy? What if I'm stuck here for actually 9 months? Then Nick can't even be here when I have the baby. Or what if I don't get back? You started panicking. And like
Oh
30
yeah.
seconds, I had 1 million thoughts. So when my mom called the embassy again, and she was like, well, my daughter has a green card, but she's a Swedish citizen. Like, what do we do? And they were like, well, she got to get back before the border closes because we can't guarantee entry to anyone after the borders are closed. This was at 10 p.m. 4 a.m., a couple of hours later, my flight took off.
Wow.
Yeah.
And you came in. So you got to tell me what happened when you landed in Florida, because that was hilarious. I had a fit out
So
of
at
that.
this point, there wasn't the mask thing yet. So we're on the plane and we didn't need a mask because COVID just hit really bad, but they weren't like, I don't know, they weren't thinking about masks. So we land in Miami, and like these spacesuits you see people have, like they have them at the hospital sometimes. Every single person at the airport had one of those on them, and they have like the thing on their back that they were breathing in. And Nick was texting me. He's like, they won't let me in to help you. He's like, I told them that you're pregnant and you need help with your luggage, but they will not let me in. And they were guarding the doors in these freaking thingies all covered up. And they took us one by one into separate rooms, checking our temperatures because there was no COVID test yet. Not here, at least, because it just happened. And they questioned us about the weirdest stuff. It was crazy. Like, it looked like a bunch of aliens walking around. Like, every single person walking. And
I
like,
don't even recall that it was that, but I was never at an airport either. But
but
it
like,
sounds kind of
I've
interesting.
never seen that though outside of that airport. Not even when COVID was at its peak. Like, that's the only time I've seen it that crazy. And like, Nick told me standing on the outside, he's like, "What the hell's going on in there?" He's like, "What is?"
You're like keeping captured. You're not coming in. You're
Yeah.
strangers. You are the aliens coming from Europe.
So that was crazy. That was a crazy time, and I'm so lucky I got in, honestly, because I heard after that, because I'm in these groups on Facebook, like Swedes in the U.S. and whatever,
Yeah.
that there was people who couldn't get back. Like, they was denied
They were
entry.
stuck there for a long time.
Yeah.
Long time. So
And
what happened with the wedding now? Did you finally get
we did on our third date, actually, December 18th,
married? Jeez.
2021. So yes, happened.
Hi,
Thank
congratulations.
you. So we were like, well, we obviously can't get married now because the borders are closed and they can't get to Sweden anyways. So we rescheduled at the same barn in Sweden for 8 months later, because no one knew that COVID was going to be what COVID was.
No
So
one could have expected it.
we rescheduled it, and then the closer it got, we were like, there's no way this is happening because all the borders are closed. So we actually got a refund from that barn because they were like, we don't know how long we can just keep on going and rescheduling it. And we understood, it is what it
Oh
is.
yeah.
So we kind of we we let it go for a little because I was getting bigger and I was almost due. We were like, we gotta focus on this first. So then, in the beginning of 2021, we were like, well, let's schedule the wedding for in Florida in December. That way, my family can come here on a summer vacation in the winter, and we'll try it. And then we agreed on, if this date doesn't work out, if the borders are closed, we're just not gonna have that wedding. It's just not gonna happen. So we
Not right
scheduled
now,
it.
at least.
Yeah, we tried. So we sent out the save the date and invitations, and October 28th, I'm pretty sure that it was 2021, they announced that they're going to open the borders November 8th. So we had the wedding.
Yay! So now you have a husband, Nick, and you have a son, David.
Yes, and David is
Oh,
today 1.5.
1.5. Time flies, huh?
Yes, it's crazy.
Time flies. Absolutely. So now you're living and working. What are you doing boxing today? You evidently you run and you work out in some way. But how is life with Thai boxing? Have you put that on the shelf and packaged away, or you doing
Not
anything with it?
really. I do have some knee problems that is not allowing me really to do it at as high of a level. And I've always said from the beginning, when I have a kid and a family, that I don't want to compete like I did before, because there's always a risk of brain damage in Thai
Mm.
boxing.
Oh yeah.
And I had a lot of concussions from it, and you never know if your next fight's gonna be the one where you get paralyzed in your whole body. Like, you never know.
It's a risky sport.
So I always said, when I have a family, I'm not gonna fight actively. But I do coach younger kids, and
Mhm.
I still train mainly more boxing because the kicks are what messes up my knees a lot. But I still work out. I still do boxing, and like I said, I train younger kids. just not to the extent of hours and time and work I put into it before.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. It's a big difference.
Yeah.
I want to go back to your little son here. You had him during COVID, and nothing is still normal, is still will never be normal. I don't think we ever go back to whatever normal was. But I want to compare a little bit. You've been in Sweden, you grew up in Sweden, and I'm coming into the healthcare system. Being pregnant in US, and okay, you have not been pregnant in Sweden, but how do you see the differences, pros and cons? Because the systems in the two countries are so different
Yes.
when it comes to healthcare. Do you prefer the Swedish or do you prefer the Americans? What are the differences that you see?
So if I wouldn't have to pay for all of it, definitely the American. um, it's definitely way more pricey here, the healthcare. We are lucky to be covered under a great plan on Nick's work, but I feel a part of us paying as much as we do for it also give you better care. It gives you more options. You can choose, oh, I don't want to see that doctor. Like, I want to see someone else, and that's a requirement, you know? You have more say in stuff like that. You can require what you want. You can tell them straight up, no, that's not happening. Or you can tell them, well, that's what I want. I want to do that, so that's what we're going to do. You have more say because easy to say it's coming out of your pocket. You're the one who's in charge here. So, and not only that, I feel like I haven't had a kid in Sweden, but most of my closer friends over there now, we're at the age where everyone is like having kids, I feel like. Um, David ended up in the NICU, neonatal after
Mhm.
he was born. So he was transferred from the hospital that I gave birth in to another hospital that's like 45 minutes away. And
Wow.
that happened when he was like 3 hours. Tiny, tiny baby.
Ooh,
Uh,
scary.
yeah. But that's what I was going to say. In Sweden, I don't feel like we have the resources. So I told Nick, I was like, you gotta go with the baby. He can't speak for himself. He needs a parent to be there and tell them what to do, what not to do, what's okay, what are we not okay with. You gotta go with him. And Nick
Yeah.
was like, but I can't leave you. Like, because I was in labor for 30 hours, so it was pretty rough
Woo.
on me. He was like, I can't leave you. Like, you're vulnerable, like you can't be here. And there was a sweet nurse, she was maybe like 45, 50, and she said, don't worry, Nick, I'm gonna sit here with her until you can come back or we can move her to the other hospital. She didn't leave me, not once. She stayed in my
Wow.
room until I could leave for the other hospital. Like, she didn't leave my side. If I had to go to the bathroom, she walked me all the way over there and she said, are you okay with me standing outside or do you want me in there? When I had anything I had to do, she was there. She said, no, I told Nick that I wasn't going to leave you, so I'm going to stay by your side. And I
That's
feel like
awesome.
that type of resource, we don't have that in Sweden. Like, there is no way they could take a nurse off the floor to stay with one patient, you know? That doesn't
No.
exist.
No, and I think that in the Americans, they are looking at Sweden and they do not realize what is actually going on in the Swedish healthcare system.
Yeah.
Just the fact if you go to the ER there, you know that you're gonna wait regardless of what you have, unless you have a heart attack or a stroke. That would
Yeah.
be the only two. You're gonna wait at least at a minimum 6 to 8 hours. You
Yeah.
will not see a doctor before that amount of time. Plus, they have all the time, not just here in COVID, but long before COVID, when I grew up, you see hallways with beds and they are full with people, and these people doesn't see a doctor in 12 hours at
Yeah.
least. So in Sweden, you don't go to the hospital in the same way for a stub toe as Americans does.
Yeah.
So sure, it's convenient to not have to pay for the healthcare in Sweden, but what do you get for the money that you actually pay for?
And it's
Um,
also one big thing for me, at least now, like since becoming a mom, now I have the say to be like, well,
mhm.
I don't want David to see that doctor. I want him to see that doctor. And they
Yeah,
can't
you
tell me
don't have those options in Sweden
in Sweden
whatsoever.
is
You're
this is a
giving a
doctor or
doctor.
no one.
Yeah. Well, I think you have a choice to choose your PCP, your
Yeah,
primary care physician, but that's it. Anything above your primary care, you are given to this is the doctor you're going to see. And with all this here in US, you can get a second opinion of whatever it may be. While in Sweden, unless you pay a private hospital or something like that, half of $1 million, if it's like you won't see anything.
exactly.
Not at all. Um, so it's always fun to see others people. I think it's other people's pros and cons just of the healthcare system because people over there or here thinks that the Swedish healthcare system is so awesome, but there's that might not work, and you
Yeah.
know it's always
I think
pros and cons with stuff.
yeah, I think the idea of the Swedish healthcare system is a very good idea. Like
Yeah,
how they want it to work and that you only pay this certain amount and like I know one of my friends gave birth last year and her bill came and it was $30. Like that was it. That's what she paid to give birth. Over
yeah,
here, mine was 200 and about $200,000.
yeah.
We didn't have to pay for that because we have insurance, but that was my bill. So like the idea of the Swedish healthcare system, I think is great, but it's just not working out the way it
In the
should.
way it was supposed to, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah. You've been here a couple of years. What do you like the best with US?
So that's a hard question. Like, so what I like the best for the US for myself, just for me, not for my family, just thinking for me, it's the way how I feel like I'm not from here and the
You
job
will
market,
always be the alien.
I know, job market finds that very attractive.
Mhm.
So if I want to get a job, my accent, the fact I'm not from here, that I've been to school in another country, that I'm fluent in more than one language, will always get me a job.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter what I want to do. I can go for a job here in Florida, or I can go for Alaska, or Texas, or Washington. I'm always going to stick out, and I know that I will always be able to get a job.
And you'll
So,
always get the question, "Where are you from?"
yeah. Oh, where are you from? Where are you from? I'm like,
No,
yeah.
the best one is, "How did you get here?" "I flew." That's
Sometimes
my
when
standard
people,
answer
yeah,
because I'm just a dumbass.
sometimes when people ask me, how did you get here then? I'm like, oh, I walked.
No, I
They're like,
swam.
I'm like, yeah, I just walked here. That's what I did.
Yep. I swam because there's some
Yeah,
water in between, and I took a break in the UK. That's yeah, but then I swam with my dogs, you know.
always,
Yeah.
always. Oh, and you had 6 horses or something too when you moved, right?
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah.
It was me. You can see here comes I, and then horse one, two, three, four, five, six. Dogs comes after, and on the very end is my mom.
He's keeping you all in the line.
Exactly. Yeah, right. That's when sometimes you just have to be a dumbass and
Yeah.
uh, yeah, I flew or I swam or
Yeah.
whatever. That I think that's a question we will just always have to live with. But on the other hand, I feel that way that I'm proud of my accent. I'm
Yeah.
proud of being different. And not all people have the story to tell that I have that, hey, I grew actually up in a country
Yeah.
far away that you may not have heard about because you can probably not see the difference between Sweden and Switzerland.
Exactly.
Yeah. So what did you find hardest when you moved over here? We talked a little bit earlier, and we were talking about dating and friends.
Yeah.
It's not to be a foreigner or an alien, whatever you want to call us. Um, is different. In Sweden, we can just hang out in somebody's house on a Friday night, which means basically eating popcorn and watching TV,
Exactly. You
not
don't
do anything
you
else.
don't do anything. You're just there.
Exactly. You're just like, oh, she fell asleep on the couch. Okay, she'll wake up and go home at some point. But
Exactly.
but here in US, you said, and I agree with you, you have to do something all the time.
It's always, oh, do you want to go out? Do you want to go shopping? Do you want to go to the mall? Do you want to go eat? Do you want to do this? It's never, oh, just come over here and watch a movie or just sit on my couch or I don't
Fika.
know. Exactly.
That is something I miss from Sweden so much. Just pop by, and I always have some crackers, something to like fika. And you don't do that here. You need to go out, go to Starbucks and take a coffee instead of
Exactly.
being home taking a coffee, which is much cheaper and very much often better.
Exactly.
Yeah. And that kind of socialization that fika involves, Americans doesn't have.
I also feel like that gets you like friendships to a deeper level, you know?
Hmm. Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
that was one of
You
my things. And I know how you said that you were proud of your accent and stuff in the beginning. Now I don't care. In the beginning, I did. I was a little bit embarrassed. Like, if I didn't have to talk to someone, I didn't. Like, I was a
yeah.
little bit embarrassed that they were gonna ask me where I'm from, that I was gonna say something wrong, that I was gonna pronounce a word wrong. Even when me and Nick first moved in together, it's so funny, and I still to this day, I say if something is on an angle, I say, "Oh, Nick, look, it's cooked," and he goes,
Crooked.
"Cooked?" He's like, "What's cooked?" And I can't remember what it was, but we were like 2 months into to living together, and I was like, "But it's cooked." I'm like, and I was trying so hard to explain what I meant, and I'm like, "Well, you know, when I'm sitting over here and I'm looking at it, it's not straight. It's like this way on an angle, so it's cooked." And now, like, that's a story we always tell people because it's like I had no idea that I was saying this word wrong, and I was thinking, how does he not know this word when he is from here? And then he told me, he's like, well, the end of that conversation, I was just pretending because it was so fun to hear you trying to explain so hard what you meant. And then I'm like, how to explain cooked? And then I was like, Nick, there's no word that is cooked, is there? He's like, no, there's not. I was like, oh. But it was a lot of stuff like that in the beginning that was hard for me. Even like we have those Alexas, you know, that you can talk to.
Hmm.
And like when there's other people around, I hated doing it. If they wanted to put music on, I was like, oh, you go ahead and do it. Or like if they wanted to know what time it was, instead of me just asking, you know, Alexa, what time it is, I had someone else do it because I was embarrassed of talking loud in front of too many people. Now I could not care less. You know, if you don't understand what I mean, well, that sucks. That's you know,
Sucks for you. Yeah.
yeah,
Well, I worked at the police department for 3 years, and I'll tell you, they told me everything I was saying wrong. And then we had this situation where we had I think it was a police officer radioing in. I can't really remember how, but something came in with, I have a flask. A flask is a little bottle for liquor.
oh,
That is what a flask is. Well, flask, I connected and I got what it was. So in Swedish, it's lunta.
yeah,
That's what it was for all our Swedish listeners here. But I figured out what he was talking about. First of all, I knew what it was, but I also connected the word for Swedish word for bottle is flaska. That can
yeah,
be our word of the week, by the way. There we go. Um, so I connected that right off the bat, and I knew what he was talking about. While the rest of the crew in that dispatch room, they're like, what is he talking about? I'm like, he's talking about a little metal bottle with alcohol in. And that's illegal to have and drive with in your car. It's an open container. That's what it is.
yeah.
And they were like, how did you know that? That's not a word. Yes, it is a word. Chief came in and he was like, what are y'all talking about? Because it became a loud conversation. And I'm like, Chief, do you know what a flask is? He's like, yes, that's if it's in a car, it's an open container with alcohol in. I was like, see, the Swedish bitch knew what it
I
was.
knew that.
Yeah, I knew that. And oh, everybody was real like, I was like, there you go. Now you go why I speak several languages and you don't.
Exactly.
I
There you
felt
go.
so good because it was such an awkward word. Absolutely. And another thing that we talked about that still today, I've been here 13 years. How long time have you been here? 4 or 5?
4.5. Yeah.
4.5. Okay, yeah, I wasn't too wrong. How about this? Swedes, you go to the store and you see a price, and that price is including tax. Still, until today, 13 years, I am annoyed that the Americans' prices are not with tax. It's you have to add that on yourself.
It's such
Wow.
an thing because you're like, oh, $20 plus $20, and there's a little thing that's gonna be 45, and then they're like, oh, that's 52. I'm like, no, and then I'm like,
No.
oh, tax. I'm
Yeah,
like, you're right,
tax,
I
right.
guess. It's so annoying. It's frustrating.
I, and they cannot understand the pounds. Why not kilos? The rest of the world, and the rest of the world measure temperature in Celsius and not in Fahrenheit. And the fun thing is when it comes to pounds and kilos, for me who works in healthcare, you ask the patient how much the patient weigh, you get an answer in pounds. Well, all medication are measured in kilos.
So it doesn't even make sense.
It doesn't. Why Americans? Why can't you change this to the rest of the world standard?
That's my dog. If you hear someone bark in the background, that's my dog
What,
saying hi.
what kind of dog is he?
He's a
He
German Shepherd.
oh
He's not a puppy, but still puppy. He is 18 months, so he's
oh
not. Yeah.
yeah. Not Twix left, but earlier you could have seen him laying here, and Bam Bam has come by and said hi too.
Well,
So
my dog Odin and my son David, they're best buddies, and they're always up to no good. They're just starting to, they're working against me here.
oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. It's always fun. And you're going to a birthday party after we've done this. I understand. That's going to be fun. I like birthday parties.
I do too, but that's also one thing that I feel like it's different here. That like, I mean this in the nicest and most humble way, but holy shit, what people are trying to outshow each other and overdo it here.
Yes.
Like
Yes, absolutely.
in Sweden, I remember growing up, the best parties was when you got a hot dog each, you got one soda, and then you just ran around the park for hours.
Yeah. What with Sweden do you miss? If you could bring something with you from Sweden over here to the American people, it can be food, a tradition, whatever. What would that be?
I love Midsummer. That's one of my
Oh
favorite.
yes. Oh yes.
I love Swedish summer. I like how it's not humid like that. And then I don't wear dresses that much. I'm very athletic, so I wear athletic clothes or jeans. But Midsummer has always been like one holiday for me that I like to get dressed up. Like I went with my stepmom when I was younger, and my mom, because I did every other year. We picked our own flowers, and
Mm-hmm.
I would
Make
love.
your wreath.
Yeah, like I just wish I could have Midsummer here, and if I could bring like, I feel like
Doesn't like Svea, Florida has celebrates midsummer, don't they?
so. There is one place in North Florida, well, not north, but more north than me, that they have like a Swedish community type of thing.
Mhm.
Um, but it's 5 hours away from me, so it's a
Oh,
little
okay.
far of a drive.
Oh crap! I didn't
Yeah,
realize it was that far away. Oh no! Oh no! Yeah, midsummer absolutely is a really fun tradition. Um, that it's basically the party night or the
yeah.
party weekend of Sweden, so to
And I've
say.
always loved the fact, you pick your own flowers and you decorate the tables and, you decorate everything. It's like an intimate family memory kind of making day, but then
Yeah.
it's also the party after.
Yeah, exactly. You get both parts there in
Yeah.
and everybody is in a good mood, you eat good food, you have a great time, and it's almost tradition it's gotta rain at least 5 minutes on every midsummer, right? Even
Yep.
though we don't like the rain, but that's kind of
But then
tradition.
I gotta say, if anyone who hears this have seen the movie Midsummer,
Oh,
that's not how it is.
no, no. I
No.
haven't seen the entire movie, but the parts that I have seen, no, 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 no.
I've
So
seen it and I wish I didn't see it. So
yeah. it's not it's not a movie that really talks to me in that sense. I saw the trailer and I saw a couple of minutes and I'm like, nah, I'm done.
Yeah, no,
Thank you
that
very
was a
much.
wild movie, and it's not how it is. So
Yeah. So what about Sweden would you like to tell the Americans about that they might not know? If they go to Sweden, what are they gonna
one
expect,
thing
you think?
that everyone here that I talk to gets like shocked by, but I feel like this is different because of where I live. So where I live, there is no buses or trains or anything like that. Like if you want to get around, you need to have a car. So
I see where you're going with this.
when I tell everybody, oh, what, like I took my bike to work. I worked 20 minutes bike ride, and I had my nice little office clothes, and then I just had a heels in the basket. Or, oh, what do you mean? I can take the bus to my mom in 10 minutes. They're like, a bus? You went
Bus?
on public transportation?
Mhm.
I'm like, yeah, there's
Yeah.
buses everywhere. You can take buses to the mall, to the beach, to anywhere. And like, it blows their mind because it doesn't exist where we live. Like, there's no
Or you,
public transportation.
yeah, and the public transportation in any city in Sweden is very well developed.
Yes.
And if you live in Stockholm, where I grew up, it's kind of funny because you have the Stockholm local traffic (SL). We have subways in Stockholm. We have trolleys and we have buses, right? But it's kind of fun because for some reason, snow is coming in Stockholm every year, and that's the time of the year when the Stockholm local traffic, they're like, I didn't know. And
Yeah.
it gets totally chaos. But it's also like everybody knows that's how it's going to be. So we still just add a couple of minutes and we're going to go there. We're going to get there. And that's how we do it.
Anyway,
Yeah. So in Sweden, for example, if you like me, I lived in a suburb, but I went to school in downtown Stockholm. That included me to take a bus to the subway and subway to the school, right? We don't have school buses unless you live way far out in the county. That's
that,
where you have school buses. But if you don't, you take the bus or the train or whatever you have to get there.
yeah.
That
That's
doesn't exist here. We don't have yellow school
the thing. Like
buses in
everyone
Sweden.
I tell, they're like, "Oh my God, really? Isn't that dangerous?"
Mhm.
I'm like, "No, about every single person who lives in the city does that every day."
Yeah, exactly. It's nothing per se. Uh, I got to ask this as well. When you and Nick met, what did he found very interesting with you because you're Swedish and saw things in a different perspective than a regular American does? Did he have anything that he found interesting just because you were Swedish?
So I don't know if this was because, well, there's different things. So I'll take it, different categories.
Mhm.
So one main thing that I will say, he is extremely freaking great, because I see a lot of other relationships over here in Sweden, and I'm sure you know this too. We are raised that a man and a woman are more equal than it is in the US.
Yes.
So, I was busting my ass in Sweden working. I bought my first apartment. Like, that was me. I did that. So for me to come over here and be like, but a woman is not as good as a man. I'm like, what do you mean? Or like how the man makes more money, so the woman, she should only be home and take care of the child. Like that's her job. In the beginning, I was like, F that. I'm like, that's not how it
Mhm.
is. Like, do you know like what my mom did as a single mom to pay rent and put food on our table? Do you know what I did to be able to afford to buy myself an apartment? Do you know what my grandma did when she came from Colombia? Like, that was something I shut down very quick. And he as a person didn't take much offense. Like, I explained, we're very open. Like, we talk a lot. I explained my side of it, how I was raised, why I was looking at it the way I am, and he explained his side of it. And we didn't even agree to disagree, because I'm
It's
very
two
thankful
cultural
for.
differences.
But it's also like, I feel like it opened his mind a lot when he heard where I came from.
Yeah.
He was like, "Yeah, that makes sense." He's like, "Wow, they just don't have us look at it that way." He's like, and when it's pushed into you from your little boy that this is the way it is. This is how it should be. Men, they don't cry. Men, they don't have emotions.
Suck it up, buttercup.
Exactly. He's like, you don't ever stop to think about it from the other side.
Yeah.
So that was one of the biggest thing. And I feel like in a good way that I've affected a lot of our mutual friends now, like in their relationships. Like, I don't care. Like, if you say something to your girl when she's sitting right here that is disrespectful or is downgrading her, I will say something. I don't care. Like,
Yeah.
don't talk to her. And if you talk to her like that in front of me, how do you talk to her when I'm not there?
Exactly.
I feel like I've kind of helped a lot of our friends, at least the girls or the like females, to stand up for themselves in another way. But that was one
Yeah.
of the big things between me and Nick. And then another thing, which is funny because now he's more like this than I am. When we first started renting, I was like, well, if this works out after a year, I think we should buy a house. He's like, what do you mean? I'm like, well, I don't want to continue paying rent because we're going to pay off someone else's mortgage. It's better that we pay off a mortgage to ourselves.
Yeah.
And all he's ever known from him and his family is that you rent. And where we live in Cape Coral, there is a lot of people who rent. They rent like their whole life. And I was like, well, look, Nick, look at it this way. We can survive living a bit cheaper now, so we can buy a house and then we pay off mortgage to ourselves. We're paying off someone else's mortgage. It would be cheaper if we own this.
Yeah.
And it's funny because that was something he never thought about. And then now we bought this house and he was like, well, now we can buy another house and then someone can pay rent and they would pay off our mortgage. And I'm like,
There you go.
you got it.
He's a businessman.
So it's funny, like, it's the small things like that. Well, it's not small things, but it's not those stuff you would imagine that would be different or something he would like react to, but it's just also depending on the location, like where in the US you live, where in Sweden I was raised, it's just different mindsets that would like put into you, I feel like.
Yeah. So another question that then comes up in my mind: do you still take off your shoes when you come home?
Yes.
Because that is exactly, that is a Swedish thing you do that you don't do here. You don't take off your shoes when you come home.
I have carpet 3 rooms in my house. Oh, I'm like,
I had a home to me the other day and I took off my shoes. I don't mind if people walk in here with shoes on because simply I have 2 dogs. They don't give a crap
yeah.
about that. Uh, but I did it apparently in a way. So he was like, do you always take off your shoes when you get home? Huh? Yeah, that's a Swedish thing. And he was baffled about that. So I was like, yeah, that's right. They don't do that here. They
But
do not take off their shoes.
it's way more comfortable. Why do you want your feet tucked in shoes all day?
Yeah. At least I changed to my indoor Crocs that I love.
So we have our bedroom and David's bedroom and the office is carpet, and then the rest of our house is tile. So I have like indoor shoes because it kind of hurts
Yeah.
you after a while.
Yeah. So but that is something that Swedes does that American absolutely does not do.
And I forced Nick
Doesn't.
to get used to it. I'm like, this house.
Well, it was so nice to have you as my first guest of 2022, Frida. Anything that I forgot to ask you, or anything you want to tell the Americans about Sweden or about you?
Let me think. No, really. I mean, there's nothing specific I can think of. I feel if there's anyone else that might be in the same situation where I am, where you have the opportunity, like I had the green card, I could go, but I didn't want to. I feel like to me now, if I was talking back to like the 20-year-old Frida, I would be like, just go for it, just try it, because my life turned out so much different than I could ever imagined. I'm living a total different life. I could not have seen this 5 years ago, but it also have given me my husband, my son. It's giving me super fortunate life, and I can't imagine where it would have been if I never tried
Yeah,
traveling.
absolutely. Absolutely. And as I say, and I've said all the years I was here, since I moved because my mom wanted to move, and I said, well, Sweden will always be there. If I
Yeah,
don't like it, I can always move back. Yeah.
exactly.
And I aim to be here for a year, maybe two, and that's 13 years ago. So
So you
apparently it was worth it, right?
yeah.
Yeah. But thank you so much for joining me today. And you see down there, you see Frida's Instagram. So go and follow her there and see some awesome wedding pictures and of her son and other things. So thank you
Thank you
so
so
much,
much for
Frida.
having.
And y'all, we'll see you next week. Thank you.
Thank you.